Imagine pushing open a heavy wooden door in the middle of a brutal January blizzard in 1976. The first thing you notice is the crunch of rock salt under your winter boots. Then comes the sudden blast of radiator heat, carrying the unmistakable scent of damp wool sweaters, heavy Pall Mall cigarette smoke, and the slightly sour yeast of stale Schlitz beer spilled on a worn carpet. Outside, the freezing wind howls, but inside, a red neon sign casts a warm glow against ancient cream brick walls. Today, if you visit that exact same corner in Milwaukee, you will probably find a lifeless asphalt parking lot or a quiet laundromat. But back then, before the world retreated behind glowing screens, that building was the center of the universe for an entire neighborhood. It begs a profound question. Why did a cramped, dimly lit, smoke-filled room on the south side offer a deeper sense of belonging than the living rooms in our own homes? And what exactly evaporated from American culture when the last neon light of those corner bars finally flickered out? In the next 20 minutes, we are not going to look at dry economic statistics about Brew City. We are not here to recite textbook history. Instead, we are going to step right back into that golden era. We will pull up a cracked vinyl bar stool, order a classic shot and a beer, and listen to the familiar rattle of the jukebox dropping a vinyl record. We are going to decode the complex, unwritten rules of the working-class men who anchored those stools. We will remember the tough but tender mothers who tended bar, and we will look through the eyes of the young children standing just outside the frosted glass doors, waiting for their fathers. This is not just a story about taverns. This is an excavation of our own youth, a journey to recover a fiercely loyal community that we built with our own hands. To understand how these spaces became so vital, we have to look at the unique DNA of Milwaukee itself. Long before the 1970s arrived, local brewing giants like Pabst, Blatz, and Schlitz realized they needed places to sell their immense oceans of beer. In the late 19th century, they began buying up residential street corners by the hundreds to build what were known as tied houses. These were sturdy, two-story structures often featuring German-style architectural arches, with simple half-drawn curtains in the windows. The business operated downstairs, while the tavern owner and their family slept peacefully right upstairs. By the 1970s, these buildings had seamlessly blended into the neighborhoods, becoming the literal heartbeat of a booming manufacturing empire. Milwaukee was a city of makers. Colossal factories like Allen Bradley and Grid Foundries employed thousands of people who worked exhausting, physically demanding shifts. When those shifts ended, the corner tavern was the automatic first stop. Adding to this incredibly unique atmosphere was a specific piece of Wisconsin legislation. Between 1972 and 1984, the legal drinking age in the state was lowered to 18 years old. This created a social ecosystem you simply could not find anywhere else in America. Inside these neighborhood hubs, you would see a freshly graduated 18-year-old factory worker sitting at the Formica counter, clinking thick glass mugs with a quiet veteran who had served in World War II. They shared the same space, the same cheap domestic beer, and the same neighborhood gossip. But those weathered cream bricks and neon signs were merely the outer shell of the institution. To truly understand the beating soul of these places, you have to step through those heavy double doors just as the second shift from the local factory is letting out. As you step inside, your eyes take a moment to adjust to the dim, amber lighting. The visual texture of the room is entirely unpretentious. Stretching out before you is a long, curving bar topped with classic Formica, its edges worn completely smooth by decades of resting elbows and sliding coins. There is no sleek modern decor here. Instead, you see a small television bolted awkwardly in the upper corner, its screen glowing with the fuzzy, static-filled broadcast of a Green Bay Packers game. Heavy winter coats, thick with factory dust and melting snow, are draped over the backs of every available vinyl stool, tucked away in the shadows near the restroom hallway, stands a massive mechanical cigarette machine. It is a hulking metal box where you pull heavy knobs to dispense packs of Winston or Salem, serving as a silent fixture in every neighborhood joint across the city, before you even take off your coat. The distinct olfactory fingerprint of the room settles deep into your lungs. It is a scent that cannot be replicated in any modern establishment. It is a heavy, comforting blanket woven from the smell of dark rye bread, thick slices of liver sausage, and sharp dill pickles waiting in large glass jars on the back counter. Cutting through the richness of the food is the sharp, clinical sting of ammonia glass cleaner, yet underlying it all, holding the entire mixture together, is the deep fermented aroma of spilled Pabst Blue Ribbon and years of trapped tobacco smoke clinging tightly to the wooden paneling. Then, the room comes alive with its own unmistakable symphony. From the back corner, you hear the sharp, echoing crack of the cue ball shattering a tight rack of billiard balls, followed by the low rumble of a heavy ball dropping into a leather pocket. Up front, there is the satisfying metallic ding of an old mechanical cash register popping open to make change. Through the rising volume of 50 different overlapping conversations, a gruff but deeply familiar voice cuts through the noise. The bartender, casually wiping down the wet Formica with a rag, looks up and says, "Grab a stool, you're blocking the door." It is not an insult, it is a genuine welcome home, as you find your seat. Another sound rises above the chatter. It is the distinct, heavy clink of quarters dropping down the coin slot of a brilliantly illuminated jukebox. The machine clicks and whirs, its mechanical arm physically gripping a vinyl record and dropping the needle into the groove. If the thought of that exact sound, perhaps playing a classic Bob Seger track, just brought a vivid, forgotten memory rushing back to your mind, please take a second to leave a like on this video. Doing so is not just a click, it is a way for all of us to raise a glass together across time, honoring the spaces that raised us. But the true magic of the tavern was not merely in its physical details. It lived in the deeply ingrained daily rituals that dictated the rhythm of the entire neighborhood, long before the sun even considered rising over the freezing waters of Lake Michigan. The tavern experienced its very first wave of life right around 6 in the morning. The heavy front door would swing open to welcome the third shift workers who had just completed a grueling night at the local machine shop. For these exhausted men and women, this was not the beginning of a chaotic day. It was the quiet, well-earned end of one. The morning atmosphere was typically hushed and deeply reverent. They would silently take their preferred seats, order a cheap 20-cent tapper of domestic beer, perhaps grab a hard-boiled egg or a pickle from the counter, and slowly decompress before heading home to sleep while the rest of the city was just waking up. The energy of the room constantly shifted and transformed depending on the hands of the clock. However, the absolute peak, the true golden hour of the Milwaukee Corner Bar, struck right around 11:30 at night. That was the exact moment when the second shift let out from the massive foundries and manufacturing plants located just down the street. The door would practically tear open, and a flood of workers clad in heavy, grease-stained jackets would pour inside. The ambient noise level would instantly double, filling the air with boisterous laughter and loud complaints about floor managers. The quiet sanctuary of the early morning was completely replaced by a roaring, vibrant clubhouse. This was the designated time for the local neighborhood leagues to truly dominate the space. You would inevitably see crinkled paper schedules for the tavern-sponsored bowling league tacked up on a dusty corkboard near the back hallway. Over in the corner, members of the bar-sponsored softball team, proudly wearing simple cotton jerseys funded entirely by the tavern owner, would loudly replay the glorious highlights of their latest summer victory over pitchers of cheap draft beer. Have you ever stopped to wonder about the invisible boundaries that govern these seemingly chaotic public spaces beneath the loud music and the flowing beer? There was an intricate code of unwritten rules that everyone in the neighborhood simply knew by heart. Take the seating arrangement, for example. That third stool from the front door officially belonged to an older gentleman named Frank, and every single regular in the zip code understood this absolute fact. If an unsuspecting newcomer accidentally sat there, nobody would yell or make a violent scene. Instead, a heavy, profound silence would fall over that specific section of the Formica counter until the stranger realized their grave mistake and politely slid over one seat. There were strict rules for buying drinks as well. The most sacred ritual of all was the casual, unspoken offering of a round among friends. A familiar face might slide a small glass down the slick bar top and firmly announce, "First one is on me, second one is your problem." It was a rough, working-class poetry that forged unbreakable, lifelong bonds of friendship and mutual respect. These specific rituals and quiet understandings are exactly what transformed a simple brick building into a true, living community. We deeply want to hear the personal stories you still carry from those remarkable days. Please take a moment to scroll down to the comment section below and share your memories with us. What brand of domestic beer were you usually drinking back then? And what was the specific name of the neighborhood joint where absolutely everyone knew your face? While we love reading about your favorite local spots. It is important to remember that the bricks and the beer were only half of the story. The true soul of these institutions lived within the diverse cast of characters who inhabited them. These complex rituals and unspoken rules were meticulously overseen by the true gatekeepers of the neighborhood. Behind that polished Formica stood someone like Dolores, a tough but deeply compassionate mother who seemed to know the intimate details of every single family within a 10-block radius. Or perhaps it was a man named John, the owner who spent his daylight hours working a grueling roofing job only to stand behind the taps until 2 in the morning. These bartenders were never just serving cheap drinks. They acted as the unofficial mayors, the local therapists, and occasionally the neighborhood bankers who allowed a trusted regular to run a small tab when the factory hours were unexpectedly cut short. They kept the peace, remembered every birth and passing, and poured a heavy shot of brandy before you even had to ask. Looking down the length of the bar, you would see a perfectly preserved cross-section of American generations trying to understand one another. You had the quiet, stoic men of the silent generation, the World War II veterans who wore their heavy winter jackets indoors and nursed a single Schlitz for hours. Sitting right next to them might be a 22-year-old boomer with long hair, perhaps fresh out of the service in Vietnam or newly hired at the machine shop down the street. They did not always agree, and the political arguments sparked over a fuzzy Green Bay Packers game could grow incredibly loud. Yet, they shared the exact same physical space, bound together by the shared exhaustion of manual labor and the undeniable loyalty they felt toward their specific corner of the city. Then, there was an entirely different perspective watching this world unfold from the outside. If you are a member of Generation X, your core memory of the tavern might not involve sitting on a stool at all. Instead, it was the distinct feeling of standing right outside those frosted glass doors on a chilly autumn evening, waiting for your father to finish his quick beer after work. Every time the heavy door swung open, you were hit with a blast of warm air, the distinct smell of cigarette smoke, and the booming sound of adults laughing freely, even as a child standing on the sidewalk. You never felt afraid or alone. You knew inherently that every adult inside that building knew exactly who your parents were. The entire neighborhood acted as a collective set of watchful eyes, weaving an invisible safety net of trust that allowed kids to roam free until the streetlights finally buzzed on. But Frank and Dolores were not just there to pour cheap beer. Beneath the thick canopy of cigarette smoke, they were unconsciously facilitating something far more profound. The ultimate philosophy of the Milwaukee Corner Bar was remarkably simple but deeply powerful. You belonged before you had to perform. In today's modern world, stepping into a venue often feels like an audition. You have to dress a certain way, order a fancy craft cocktail, or project a specific social status just to feel accepted. The neighborhood tavern completely erased those artificial boundaries. It was the local confession booth, the unofficial employment office, and the working-class country club all rolled into one dimly lit room. There was a profound dignity in that lack of pretense if someone lost their job at the foundry. The regulars quietly passed a hat down the Formica counter, pooling their crumpled dollar bills to help a struggling family pay the winter heating bill, if a couple got married, or if a beloved neighbor suddenly passed away. The news did not travel through isolated digital feeds. It was delivered face-to-face, often accompanied by a free round of drinks to either celebrate the shared joy or dull the collective pain. These spaces were the absolute social glue of the city, binding together people who had nothing in common except their zip code and their physical exhaustion. Right now, as you listen to this, you might be picturing the face of an old friend you used to shoot pool with on those freezing Saturday nights. Please take a moment to click the share button and send this video directly to them. It is the perfect excuse to reach out, bridge the gap of the years, and simply ask how they are doing today. That bustling, fiercely loyal ecosystem seemed like it would cast its warm shadow over the Milwaukee sidewalks forever. But just outside those frosted glass windows, the massive gears of the American economy were beginning to turn in a very different direction. The decline of the corner bar did not happen overnight. It started with subtle, heartbreaking cracks in the foundation of the community, the mighty factories, the loud machine shops, and the massive foundries that provided the absolute lifeblood of the neighborhood slowly began to close their doors or relocate their operations, as the steady manufacturing jobs vanished into history. The reliable second shift crowds began to thin out, leaving empty stools at the counter. Simultaneously, massive cultural forces were completely rewiring how Americans spent their precious evenings. Stricter drunk driving regulations were rightfully enacted to keep the streets safe, but they fundamentally altered the casual culture of the neighborhood drink. People could no longer easily hop from tavern to tavern, instead of walking down to the corner to catch up with friends. Families began retreating into their individual homes, drawn inward by the sudden explosion of cable television. The screen replaced the barroom as the center of entertainment. The tightly knit urban villages began to unravel as younger generations moved out to the sprawling, disconnected suburbs, leaving the old cream brick buildings behind to weather the storms alone. This is exactly why our channel exists today. We are fiercely dedicated to rescuing these fading American spaces from the verge of total historical obscurity. Please click the subscribe button to join our community and help us build a permanent video archive of the magnificent memories that shaped our incredible generation. When the neighborhood tavern finally died, there were no grand obituaries or official press releases in the local papers. It was a quiet, almost invisible surrender. The glowing beer signs slowly gathered rust. The heavy wooden doors were locked for good. And eventually, thick plywood boards covered the windows. We must be honest and admit these places were not perfect. They were plagued by excessive drinking, occasional fistfights, and enough trapped tobacco smoke to ruin your lungs. But when those doors boarded up, the neighborhood lost the one physical space where it could actively look in the mirror and recognize its own beautiful, flawed face. A Milwaukee neighborhood tavern in the 1970s felt like a smoky, beer-soaked family room for an entire city block. It was half workplace, half clubhouse, half confession booth, and by some absolute miracle, all three at the exact same time. Today, that faded cream brick building might stand completely empty on the corner, but the resilient, generous soul of the people who drank there remains an unbreakable part of who we are. If you ever worked at Allen Bradley, or if you grew up running around the South Side. Did I miss a crucial detail about your favorite local spot? Please add your piece of history to the comment section below so we can complete this magnificent picture together.